All right, let's start off first here with the wide receiver position. Through the first half of the season, Buck, I'll let you go first here. Let's start out first with the most impressive group of wideouts through the first half.
Well, so I've already been privy to your answer, so I'm going to leave your answer. I'm going to let it be. I'm going to say this team is really impressive when they all are together and playing. The Houston Texans. And the reason why the Houston Texans wide receiver core is the most impressive group to me is I see all of the pieces of the puzzle perfectly aligned and they fit. DeAndre Hopkins is a natural number one. He makes those plays that are there to be made. When Will Fuller's in the lineup, he's the vertical stretch guy. We see the explosive plays happen when Deshaun Watson is able to find him down the field. The trade that they made, and it didn't get a lot of attention, but Kenny Stills coming over from Miami, I believe he is the perfect number 3. We've seen him show up in little moments. He can run. He has some sizzle and some juice when he has the ball in his hands. When I look at the Houston Texans, and they haven't necessarily maxed out their potential, but, man, I think this wide receiver core is ideal for the quarterback they have in Deshaun Watson. As they get down the stretch, I think you'll see them make a bigger impact on the Texans' games.
That's a great answer. I like that group. I'm going to go, though, to the Los Angeles Rams. And this is a group that you knew what you had in Brandon Cooks, somebody that's a vertical stretch receiver who's tough after the catch. You had Robert Woods, who's one of the better route runners in the NFL, is outstanding on crossers and do a lot of the dirty work, even help you in the run game as an outstanding blocker. But Cooper Kupp is on pace for over 1,500 yards receiving. He's doing a lot of that damage in the slot. He's physical. He's tough. The yards after the catch are ridiculous with what he's been able to do working there with Jared Goff. So talk about variety of receivers, guys that can do different things and fill different roles. Man, I think this Rams group is as good as it gets. Maybe the only thing you could say they're missing is just that kind of hulking giant down there in the red zone. But this group collectively, they're explosive, and they've got outstanding hands, which is something I'll always appreciate.
They do have terrific hands, do a great job of catching the ball in space, and I do like the way that they complement one another. Cooper Kupp coming off that huge 200-plus yard game overseas, but we've seen Robert Woods and Brandon Cooks both play big driving force roles for this offense. And when they're going and when everything is working on this offense, I know we've been kind of down on the Rams this year because they haven't been as spectacular as they've been the previous 2 years. But when they are going, they are as tough a group to defend as any group in the National Football League, so they deserve to certainly be on this list.
All right, let's flip it around here. The most disappointing receiver group through the first half of the season is who?
Man, for me, it has to be the Cleveland Browns. And I can't put it all on the wide receivers. I think play calling, I think quarterback play, all those things have been factors. But whenever you just read the list, if we were playing the video game and you had a choice to pick any wide receiver core to play with on Madden, you would like to think that a core with OBJ and Jarvis Landry would have a ton of success. And on paper, they should, but for whatever reason, it's not playing out like that. And I know this team has kind of gotten away from themselves. They're doing a little more 11 personnel, 3 wide receivers on the field, and it hasn't delivered the kind of promising results that we expected. But right now, I'm just looking at OBJ and Jarvis Landry, and the first word that comes to mind when I look at them on the field, wasted. I think the Cleveland Browns are wasting the talent and the personnel that they have on the perimeter. They're not letting those guys have the ball enough to really impact the game. And I'm saying this fully aware that Nick Chubb is the driving force of the offense. They have to find a way to make Nick Chubb a priority while also getting OBJ and Jarvis Landry the ball enough where they can impact it.
Yeah, look, the schedule's set up for them to get on a little bit of a run. We'll see if they can get this receiving group unlocked and rolling here. I'm going to go to a team that's had a big win recently, but the Philadelphia Eagles, the receiving core over the first half of the season, they've been disappointing to me for really kind of a bunch of different reasons. You bring in Deshaun Jackson. Deshaun made some big plays. You saw that explosiveness, and unfortunately, durability has been an issue. Hasn't been able to get out there on the field. Nelson Aguilar has had some huge, costly drops. One of them in the Atlanta game probably cost him that football game. So that's been disappointing. Alshon Jeffrey's been good. He's been solid. But, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside I thought might have a chance to really emerge and pop as a rookie. That hasn't really happened.
Yeah.
And just overall, especially without Deshaun Jackson, Buck, this team they lack juice. They lack some explosiveness down the field. And I thought we'd see, a more dynamic, explosive passing game. It hasn't happened.
It hasn't happened, and I'm really surprised because, man, I thought this crew was locked and loaded and ready to go. With Carson Wentz returning, Deshaun Jackson adding the juice on the perimeter, I thought we would see a lot of production. Now, I know Deshaun Jackson has been hurt, but still, this is an experienced group, a group that has won a Super Bowl together. For whatever reason, it just hasn't worked, and so we'll see what kind of resurgence they can make down the stretch this season.
All right, let's get to an up-and-coming group. This is a young group of receivers that we're excited about for the future. Who do you got?
Man, it's funny. You talk about a young group. I didn't take it necessarily a young group, but I think this team is up and coming in the passing game, and that's the Minnesota Vikings. We heard Kirk Cousins have to make an apology to Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs for the way their offense was performing. Well, since that apology, this group has done nothing but tear it up on the perimeter. And this is a team that has become a Dalvin Cook-driven team where the running game is really setting it up. They're living in 21 personnel, and Diggs and Thielen on the outside are absolutely getting it done. It took a while. They started off slow, but right now I think you can make the case that the Minnesota Vikings offense is one of the more feared offenses in football because it's balanced, but it's also explosive in the passing game.
Yeah, they've got it going. I think you're right, Buck. They've found their rhythm. We'll see if they can hold that and maintain that as we go through the second half of the season. I'm going to go to a group of the stats. You're not going to be impressed by the stats, but having seen this team up close and in person, I love the Tennessee Titans' young duo of wide receivers. You got the rookie A.J. Brown out of Ole Miss, who is a physical specimen when you see him out there. Absolutely a stud after the catch. He's got strong hands. He's going to emerge as a big-time playmaker for this team. And then Corey Davis, first-rounder from a couple years ago. You're starting to see him start to blossom a little bit. There haven't been a lot of opportunities in this offense, unfortunately, for these guys. But since the switch at quarterback, you're starting to see them come to life a little bit. And if I was kind of buying futures, I would like to buy the futures here with this Tennessee Titans receiving core. These are big, hulking, impressive dudes that are going to be a matchup problem for people in that division.
They are matchup problems, and I think the thing, we've talked about this on previous podcasts, looking at physicality at the wide receiver position. It is about the juice and it's about the craftsmanship. But really, the guys that are beginning to dominate and impose their will in the National Football League are those physical, tough, gritty wide receivers. And look, Tennessee's putting together a nice core because what you're seeing in A.J. Brown is a physical, tough guy that can win on the outside. And then Corey Davis is finally settling in and being the player that most people thought that he would be when he was picked very, very high in the draft. If they can continue to develop like they've been developing this year, yeah, you talk about a team that is very, very problematic on the outside, especially with Ryan Tannehill playing well at quarterback.
All right, I want to get your thoughts. Let's switch gears now. Let's get to the running back position, Buck. The most impressive group at the running back position through the first half of the season, who you got?
I think I'm going to surprise you because I'm going to go with the Minnesota Vikings. And I'm going to go with the Minnesota Vikings because they are absolutely running the ball and cramming it down people's throats. Everyone has talked about Dalvin Cook, and Dalvin Cook has been absolutely terrific. But people aren't talking about his partner, Alexander Madison. Both of these guys are getting it done on perimeter runs, meaning runs outside the tackle. Dalvin Cook has 14 rushes of 10-plus yards on the outside against slight boxes. Look, Matheson is fifth in those with 9 rushes of 10 or more yards. So the explosive runs in the running game have really propelled the Vikings and helped them kind of get back off a disappointing start. This running game is really, really good. They are a dominant unit, a dominant duo together.
Yeah, they've run the ball extremely well. I think that scheme matches the personnel, too. I mean, Dalvin Cook was born to run in that system, and he's been outstanding. I'm going to go to the 49ers, and I love the creativity that Kyle Shanahan has in their run game design. But, man, they've got a trio of backs there, Buck. When you look at Mostert, the way he's played, you look at Tevin Coleman, what he's done, giving him some of that pop, some of those deep runs. Breida runs hard. He's been very efficient. You know, Kyle Juszczyk, I think, is the best fullback in the NFL. Unfortunately, he's been down and injured a little bit. But that collection of backs to go along with just what they do creatively in the run game, a lot of that deep motion, they do a nice job of pulling guys out of the box and creating great lanes and great matchups. And even without their starting 2 tackles, they've had some injuries there. This team has continued to run the ball extremely well. So to me, the most impressive group of running backs, that's Kyle Shanahan's group up there in San Francisco.
Look, man, I know you can make the case for that. They got 3 guys that are absolutely running the ball at will. And the way that they're doing it, you talked about Kyle Shanahan's creativity. This team leads the league in pre-snap motions and shifts. And so when you really look at them on tape, they're running about 4 or 5 running plays. But all of the organized chaos before the snap makes it nearly impossible for the defense to figure it out. This is a brilliantly designed running game with the right runners that fit the scheme. Everything is working in San Francisco. And I think it's interesting that both of these teams are running very similar type schemes, and they found the right running backs to fit. When you talk about the 49ers and the Vikings both running variations of the Mike Shanahan and Alex Gibbs running game.
All right, most disappointing running back group. Who you got?
I'm going to go to Chicago Bears. And I don't know what has happened with Matt Nagy and the creativity and the running game, but it's not appearing. We're not seeing these guys dominate on the ground. And I love David Montgomery in the draft. I think he's a perfect pro. Yep. But they just have not been able to run the ball consistently. Some of that is due to the quarterback and the issues that he's having and them not being able to kind of get those guys out of the box. But Tariq Cohen, David Montgomery, so much more was expected of them. And at some point, the Bears need to get the production, or they could find themselves on the outside of the postseason tournament.
Yeah, I think if you want to be encouraged as a Bears fan, last week they finally got David Montgomery going. They found some success there, but the rest of the first half of the season, it's been a nothing burger with that rushing attack. So I'm with you. I expected a little bit more, but maybe there's a bright side there that they can get this thing turned around, because I do think those two runners are very talented. I'm going to go my most disappointing group. Look, this is a bad football team, the Cincinnati Bengals. I know they've had injuries along that offensive line, but Joe Mixon, we know how talented he is. Gio Bernard's a nice complimentary back. Nothing, Buck. I mean, nothing. They can't run the football. And I know it's a combination of A.J. Green being out, and that's going to allow people to load up in the box. You're not very good up front. That being said, though, when I just look at two things, the talent and the production, there is a tremendous gap in Cincinnati in that running back room.
Yeah, just really surprised, man. Joe Mixon, this is a guy that had over 1,000 yards last year, looked really good, looked like he was ready to do it. And Zach Taylor comes in, and for whatever reason, hasn't been able to get on track. Giovanni Bernard has proven that he can catch the ball in the league. But you're right, a very disappointing group, disappointing offensive output. And we've seen it because Ryan Finley is going to be the starting quarterback because that offense hasn't given the Cincinnati Bengals what they thought that they would get prior to the season.
Give me an up-and-coming running back group.
How about this? How about the Arizona Cardinals being up and coming? And it's not because of David Johnson. We've seen David Johnson be on the cusp of being like a 1,000 guy in terms of 1,000 rushing yards and 1,000 receiving yards. But the Cardinals have found a running mate. Chase Edmonds has been really effective for them in David Johnson's absence. 295 rushing yards, 4 rushing touchdowns. And then when you get David Johnson back, you now have 2 guys that can really impact you not only as runners but as receivers. Man, when I think about Cliff Kingsbury and as he continues to adjust to the National Football League, he has to feel good in knowing that he has 2 running backs that can begin to be impactful on the offense the way he envisions it going forward.
Yeah, now both those guys beat up a little bit, so they go add Kenyon Drake and trade for him, Buck. I think we're going to see a lot of Kenyon Drake here in the second half of the season as they try and nurse those guys back to health. But now you've got a chance in this organization. Now you've got 3 really interesting running backs there for the Arizona Cardinals who fit well inside that scheme with Cliff Kingsbury. I'm going to go to Cleveland Browns. We saw Nick Chubb get loose against the New England Patriots. They got Hilliard, who's a good young back. And look, they're going to get coming off of suspension. You're going to get one of the better runners in the NFL, Kareem Hunt. So if you want to buy stock in a team and you look at the schedule and you look at who they have in that position group, I think we've got a chance to see an explosive, dynamic run game from Cleveland here in the second half.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they are on fire. I think the best thing that the Cleveland Browns can do is to pause and realize that on offense, things are a lot better when it runs through Nick Chubb. Let Nick Chubb be the bell cow. Yep. Let him be the focal point of the game plan. And then everyone else kind of is prioritized after that. But when Nick Chubb is getting the ball and running the rock, man, this team looks like a physical team. The team that we were starting to fall in love with at the end of the season. Make Nick Chubb the priority because you're right. They do have one of the best upcoming young running back rooms that we've seen.
Let's switch over to the defensive side of the ball. If we're looking at the first half of the season, we're looking at a pass rush, defensive line, outside linebackers, wherever you want to classify it, but just the most impressive group rushing the passer there in the first half of the season is who?
So, look, man, I tried to find a different answer from your answer, but we just have to say
have to.
The San Francisco 49ers right now have been the most impressive group. And the reason they've been impressive is because they have 5 first-rounders playing in that rotation, and they all are playing like first-round picks. And so we talked about investing in where we know the marquee positions are on the football team. Well, the San Francisco 49ers haven't done that. They've done it not only through the draft, but in free agency they pulled over Dee Ford, and Dee Ford has played like a first-round pick for them. Everybody is playing at a high level, and I guess the luxury of what they've been able to do is, man, they can limit the snap counts, and these guys are fresh, and they're playing from ahead. the San Francisco 49ers have been very, very impressive on the defensive line.
Yeah, look, that's my answer as well. I mean, we're on the same page here when you look at what they've done and add Nick Bosa and how dynamic he has been. I've said this. Look, I'll go on record. He's the best leverage pass rusher I've ever evaluated, just in terms of guys that can get under people and just have tremendous power. I've never seen anybody do it as well as he's done it. So he's a special player. Everybody else is playing at a high level. You got those two twin towers inside with DeForest Buckner as well as Eric Armstead. You mentioned D. Ford. Solomon Thomas is coming along. Even Ronald Blair, my guy from App State, has been rolling through there. They've got a lot of depth running those guys through, and they're playing at a very high level. I would just add a couple other teams here, though, that probably deserve some mention. The Saints, with what they've done.
Yeah, very good.
Cam Jordan, we've seen Marcus Davenport take a leap forward here in his second year. That defensive line has been very dominant. And then I would also add maybe an underrated group, the Carolina Panthers, who did not rush the passer well last year. They go draft Brian Burns. We've seen this group kind of take off. Mario Addison's been a good player for them. They've piled up a lot of sacks, so I want to give them some love as well.
No, they certainly have piled up some sacks. They have been impressed. They just didn't have a great performance against the 49ers, and unfortunate for them, that is a lasting impression. That is what you think about. And so they've been good. Brian Burns, for me, and based on my evaluation, he has been better than I anticipated. He has made some plays, got a ton of quarterback hits. He's been very, very involved. And so for the Carolina Panthers, he has been a part of this resurgence that they've had up front.
All right, let's get to the most disappointing pass rush group in the first half is who?
I'm really disappointed in the Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles are a team that, for so long we've talked about the way that they've built this team. They built this team with the front, the trenches, the trench warriors. First and foremost, the way they prioritized those guys on draft day and all the decisions they made. And offensively, they've been okay, but defensively, they haven't been able to do it. Fletcher Cox has been kind of null and void. Now, part of that is because he hasn't played alongside a dominant player. So everyone are double teaming him. They're making sure that he is a non-factor in the pass rush. But we haven't seen anybody else step up. Brandon Graham, Derek Barnett. We just haven't had enough guys show up, and that's been the disappointing thing. And so for this wide nine defense to work on the Jim Schwartz, you have to be able to create pressure and generate it with the front four, and they just haven't been able to do it without blitzing and exposing their corners.
Yeah, look, they played better against Buffalo, but if you take out the game against the Jets, who are awful, right, one of the worst offensive lines I've ever seen. I think they piled up 10 sacks in that game. I'm with you. I expected a little bit more production here from this Philadelphia Eagles group. They've had flashes. They played well against the Packers. They played well against the Bills, but haven't been as consistent as expectation would have been. So I can understand that. I'm going to go look. Atlanta Falcons have 7 sacks in 8 games. Ooh. They stink. Now, the Jets are another team that can't rush the quarterback, but we knew they couldn't rush the quarterback. There was no expectation. When I look at that Falcons team, I look at the coaching staff they have in place, what their expertise is. I look at the first-round picks they have coming off the edges. I look at one of the better interior pass rushers in the league in Grady Jarrett, and it's nothing. Just absolutely nothing from this group. Now, we'll get to their secondary in a minute because they aren't very good either. But they've been the most disappointing pass rush to me.
Yeah, really, really, really disappointing. Just can't get home. And if you can't get home in this league, it makes it difficult because you can't blitz all the time because you expose your corners, lead them in one-on-one situations. Most teams would prefer to rush with 4 so they can keep maximum protection. But with the Atlanta Falcons, the Atlanta Falcons overall have just been a very disappointing unit. It's unfortunate because they have some good guys. I like Dan Quinn, I like Thomas Dimitroff, but on the field, these guys just haven't been productive at the point of attack.
All right, give me an up-and-coming group here, up-and-coming pass rush group.
This is tough because this is one of my former teams, the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers are up-and-coming because all the moves that they've made in the offseason have really paid off. Za'Darius Smith, Preston Smith, Rashawn Gary. We've seen their young guys show up and flash. They haven't done it consistently, but, man, the flashes have been impressive because when they're able to flash, they generate pressure. Then comes the turnovers, and part of the reason they've been able to generate so many turnovers is because the pass rush has created some pressure on the quarterback. He feels it, and he has to perform under duress. This Packers team, they go as the turnovers go, but the turnovers come because the pass rush has been a factor, has been effective for Mike Pettin.
Yeah, it's a good group. I'm looking forward to seeing them live in person this week. I'm going to go, though, to the Jacksonville Jaguars. In the draft this year, Dave Caldwell and company and Tom Coughlin, they were given a gift when Josh Allen fell in their lap. I did not think there was any chance he would be there when they picked him. He's tied with Nick Bosa, 7 sacks amongst rookies. He's been outstanding off the edge. You've got Yannick Ngakoue. The rest of that defensive front, we're seeing guys play at a very high level. So I look at this group, I think they're 3rd in the league or something like that in sacks. They've been getting after the quarterback. So to me, I think it's a lot of young talent. I expect them to do big things as you come through the second half of the season. Very high on this Jacksonville Jaguars pass rush.
Yeah, look, man, the Jaguars are coming. Saxonville quietly is returning to fame, and look, the things are kind of doing kind of coming together for the squad. So I'm excited to see what it plays out. Now, the thing that you talk about with the Jaguars, I just like the way the pieces of the puzzle fit. And I think sometimes we just underestimate how important it is for it to be balanced. I think the moves that they made, Josh Allen coming on like gangbusters, Taven Bryan has been kind of coming on, and then we've seen the steady Eddie, Calais Campbell, and those guys. Yeah, it just really, really works for the Jaguars. So hats off to them for kind of getting it right at the point of attack.
Hey, and Jags fans, don't forget you got some extra picks coming your way as a result of that Jalen Ramsey trade as well. So they've got a chance to really upgrade the rest of their roster here in the upcoming off season. All right, let's go to the secondary, Buck, and let's go most impressive group. Who do you have?
I mean, I think this is easy. I think you and I see it from the same thing. The New England Patriots
have to
be
it, right?
Yeah, they have to be. They have to be
it.
the most impressive group. The way the Patriots are able to play is impressive. And normally, when you see someone, they see a team that has 18, 19 interceptions, it's already impressive. But then the way they're doing it, playing almost 65% of the coverage is man-to-man. So this is a team that is just challenging everything that you do. Their guys are locked up in man-to-man. They're not getting a lot of help from anybody else, and they're just suffocating passing games. And I know everyone say, well, what quarterbacks have they played against? It doesn't matter. All these guys are NFL players. These quarterbacks can hurt you. We've seen them hurt you at various times in their careers, and the New England Patriots have just bottled up everybody. They deserve to be at the top of the list.
Think about these numbers here real quick. The teams have thrown the ball against the New England Patriots 273 times. During that time, the Patriots have picked off 19 of those 273 throws, and they've allowed 2 touchdowns. This is 8 games. They've allowed 2 passing touchdowns in 8 games. I know. Look, I don't care who you're playing against. I know the quarterbacks they've played against haven't been great. The teams, the records haven't been great. They'll see better competition in the second half, but I don't know if I've ever seen anything like that, Buck. I mean, you can't get anything on this group. And you're right, they're in your face. They're smart. They marry their pressures with their coverages beautifully. Mm-hmm. It's something to watch. It's been teaching tape for the rest of the league.
It absolutely has been teaching tape. It's been something that, like, look, as a high school coach, I'm sitting there looking at them and just being like, wow, you can really get away with playing man-to-man that much. And, yes, they have some talent, but there are also some undrafted guys in their group. And I just think it's the teaching, the coaching, the player development, and then the talent where these guys are really suited to play man-to-man. All of it is working in the secondary in New England.
All right, let's go to most disappointing secondary in the first half.
It's funny because the most disappointing secondary no longer exists now, but I'm going to say this. The L.A. Rams were the most disappointing secondary because Akeem Talib and Marcus Peters didn't play like we expected them to play. Like, they were having a tough time staying with their men, and they were coverage bust, and we saw big plays and explosive plays, and the quickest way to lose games in the National Football League is to let the ball fly over the head of the defense, and that's what was happening in L.A. So you know what the L.A. Rams did? Got rid of both of them. Akeem Talib is now in Miami. Marcus Peters is in Baltimore. He'll upgrade the Baltimore secondary because of the way that he plays. But I have never been more disappointed in a group that I thought was going to be a star collection of a 1-2 punch on the perimeter than I was with the LA Rams in the way that Marcus Peters and Akeem Talib played this season.
Well, look, they have an opportunity to try and get this thing turned around now. They've got a chance now. The record is still solid. They're in good position here to get in the postseason, see if this new collection of names can get it done. Look, the worst secondary in the league is Arizona Cardinals, but my expectations were not high for them, especially with Patrick Peterson. You knew what the suspension was going to mean for that back end. So they've been the worst. But in terms of the most disappointing, I got to double up. I'm going to go back to the Atlanta Falcons. I said their pass rush was the most disappointing. To me, their secondary is the most disappointing. We mentioned the Patriots and their secondary, only having allowed 2 touchdowns, picked off 19 balls. It's the exact opposite for the Atlanta Falcons. They've allowed 19 passing touchdowns, and they've picked off 2 balls. That is not a good ratio. So they've given up all kinds of plays. There's been coverage busts, guys running wide open. You go back and watch some of these games, particularly the Houston game, where they're just turning guys wide open when they're rushing 3 and dropping 8. It's inexcusable. So to me, that's been the most disappointing group.
I mean, very disappointing. You just expect more, and you're not getting it. And so, look, man, you don't want to keep crushing people, but man, everything on this team. We could fill out this team in all of these spots with the exception of wide receiver. Just a huge disappointment, maybe the biggest disappointment of the year.
All right, Buck, let's keep it moving here. An up-and-coming group there in the secondary you're high on.
You know, it's funny. This is an up-and-coming group, but I think they arrived last year. How about the New Orleans Saints and the way that they're playing defense? All of their pieces of the puzzle fit really, really well. And Dennis Allen has done a great job. He and Aaron Glenn have done a great job of developing their young guys. Marcus Lattimore and those guys are kind of stepping up and making plays. This defense is just solid. They're solid because they make you earn every yard that you get in the passing game while not conceding a lot of big plays. If you want to play good defense in the National Football League, those two things have to be at the top of your priority. And so the fact that Dennis Allen has those guys playing well and adhering to that standard speaks volumes about the coaching and teaching and the talent that they have down in New Orleans.
Yeah, that group's played really well, and that entire defense has played great. I'm going to go to the Green Bay Packers, and we talk about building receiving cores and having different body types like a basketball team. You could say the same for the secondary. And this group with Mike Pettin and company there in Green Bay, when you have Kevin King, who's done a nice job matching up with some of those bigger wide receivers, Jair Alexander, one of the better all-around young corners in the NFL, different sizes, different skill sets, really good football players. And then you look at the rookie. I know he's been injured a little bit, but Darnell Savage, when he's been out there, has been flying all over the field, making big-time plays. He's been impressive. Maybe a little bit of a surprise when he was picked there in the first round, but he has lived up to it. And then Adrian Amos coming over from the Bears, steady Eddie, solid player. I think this is a really good group that's going to continue to improve.
Yeah, absolutely. They're going to continue to improve because it is coming on like gangbusters. The investment in the back end. We're seeing years and years of these guys being drafted, finally getting on the field, finally having an opportunity to make plays, and they're doing it because the pass rush is better. So then when the pass rush is better, the ball comes out, the coverage, and the pass rush is married. Great job by the Packers kind of getting it together, getting it done.